Keir Starmer has come out with digital ID cards.
This was not in the manifesto. We didn't vote for this. We didn't agree to this. And we were kind of blindsided. I think everybody was. Nobody really predicted that Starmer was going to raise this.
They're basically proposing to have a bunch of your information in one place connected to a digital identity. And these exist in a number of European countries, in a lot of Eastern European countries, in Romania, I think in Estonia, and a bunch of countries. And the argument in favor of them is that they make life easier, you can have all your stuff in one place, it also gives the government the opportunity to keep a connection between, your health records and your employment and a bunch of other things. And it's true that, if you get all the information about people in one place, it does make it easier for government to do things. On the other hand, we have a government that locks people up for tweets, shuts you in your home because there's a bad flu going around, and thinks half the country's far right, quote unquote.
What Konstantin is highlighting here is the classic trade-off between convenience and control. At first glance, digital IDs are framed as tools of efficiency. Everything in one place, smoother processes, easier connections between services. But in the broader context of a government that already restricts speech and movement, this begins to look less like progress and more like a step towards a permanent monitoring system. The justification of tackling illegal immigration feels unconvincing when the real problem lies in enforcement, not identification. And this is where George Orwell's warning in 1984 becomes so relevant. Once the architecture of surveillance exists, it inevitably expands beyond its stated purpose. As Kisin foreshadows, the danger is not hypothetical. Digital IDs could quickly become a mechanism for tracking dissent, protests, and even ordinary behavior, eroding freedoms under the guise of security and order.
They're lying about what this is for. And this is the biggest red flag in all of this. They are claiming that this is about illegal immigration. They are claiming they'll introduce these cards and then you'll have to show them when you apply for a job or when you want to rent a house, for example. And that will stop illegal immigration. And that makes zero sense. It makes actually no sense at all. We know that there's up to 1 million illegal immigrants in the country. And the government knows who many, if not most of them are. Not least because a lot of them are staying in hotels and private rentals that we're all paying for as taxpayers. So we know exactly who they are. And yet they're still here. They're not being removed. And more are coming every day. So the reason we have an illegal immigration problem is not that we can't identify them, it's that we're not removing them. And this has got, basically, they're just straight up, the government is lying to you. That is what they're doing. This has nothing to do with illegal immigration. And this is the other piece about this, is this isn't a Keir Starmer policy. That's why it's come out of the blue. That's why it wasn't in the manifesto. This is something that Tony Blair tried to introduce in 2005. He's then created a think tank, which is funded predominantly by Oracle. And it has a budget of like $150 million or pounds, which compared to most think tanks in this country is like 100 times as much, maybe 300 times as much as most of them, which have a budget of like 4 or 5 million. So it's a hugely influential thing for advancing Tony Blair's ideas. And we basically now have, what we've realized this week is Starmer's not in charge. We have a government by Blair who is pulling the strings in the background. And now this deeply unpopular government is attempting to do this. This makes no electoral sense whatsoever.
It's a fantasy, quite frankly. And also as well, what's really interesting is this is revenue generation. So every time a company is caught employing an illegal immigrant, they're going to be fined £60,000. Also in 2023, April 2023, the Home Office did an investigation in which they found 2 out of every 5 fast food drivers were illegal immigrants. So already, this is a country that has a 30 billion deficit.
I don't think it's about revenue generation. I think it's about ideology. I think, and Tony Blair is a technocrat. He believes basically that the people at the top need to decide everything themselves. And if you could have total control over everybody, everything would be wonderful. This is the Chinese model.
And what's wrong with that?
Exactly. And you can get a lot done. It's just what you're doing is you're You're building control infrastructure. That's what this is really about. It's about building the infrastructure of control so that then you can control people's behavior. And you don't need to be a genius, and also you don't need to be on a particular side of the political spectrum to see what a danger this is. So use your imagination for 1 second. Imagine you have this infrastructure of control, and then apply it to recent events. For example, we just obviously, I went along and filmed at the Tommy Robinson protest and rally, and there was a lot of genuine concern, I think for good reasons, that might become violent. Now, do you not think that if this sort of thing existed, the police wouldn't say, well, look, let's just have some barriers at the entrance to the area, and we'll scan everybody in for everyone's safety, to make sure we know who's in there, and so people know that they've been kind of registered in, so that if they misbehave, we'll know who they are much more easily. The general public will agree to that if the control infrastructure is in place. And now you've got effectively all pro-Palestine action protests. Let's make sure that anyone goes in there, we're scanning their identity. Let's make sure we know who they are. Before you know it, basically the government's got the information of anyone who's part of any movement, really. And they can go, okay, well, you're a Tommy Robinson supporter. Let's make sure we pay extra attention to your Twitter account. Let's make sure we double check your Facebook posts. Let's make sure we look at this. Let's look at, and before you know it, you've basically created the infrastructure for the government to punish people for having a different opinion, to track them for having a different opinion. It is incredibly dangerous.
I know we want to forget about the pandemic. I know the pandemic is a hack topic to some people, but just think back to what happened to during the pandemic. A lockdown happened. You're meant to go for 1 walk a day. That was it. 1 walk a day. Now imagine if every one of your movements is tracked. All of a sudden, you could step out and you do your 1 walk. But let's say your daughter's sick and you've had an argument with the wife or whatever, and you just want to go for a walk. Well, the moment you cross the threshold of your door, you're being tracked. It could even be, and bear in mind the bank account's linked to it. So before you know it, boom, your 50 quid fine, the money's come out of your bank account by the moment you've crossed the threshold. This is giving out to the government data and movements and whatever else, which is deeply, deeply worrying.
In this video, Konstantin Kisin exposes the true implications behind the push for digital ID cards in Britain. What begins as a seemingly harmless proposal for efficiency and immigration control is revealed to be something far more troubling: the creation of an infrastructure of surveillance and control. Listening to his arguments, I can't help but agree that this is less about security and more about power. Once the state has the tools to track opinions, movements, and associations, freedom itself becomes conditional. To me, this echoes Orwell's 1984, a reminder that liberty erodes gradually disguised as progress.